We know that a lot of our potential students have hoped to visit campus this spring and have a lot of these conversations in person. But we are really excited that you continue to engage with us and that we were able to get some of our alums available to you today. With that, I'm going to introduce our Assistant Dean for Career Development, Veronica Aparicio. Veronica has been with our Career Development Office for 12 years. Before joining our team, she was with the University of Colorado Law School in a similar role. And prior to working on the law school side, she worked as a law firm recruiter in New York City. So Veronica, thank you for joining us tonight, and I am going to turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Kate. And thank you to all of you who've joined us tonight. I'm really excited. This is our first virtual alumni panel, and I love working with our alumni because I had the pleasure of working with all of these folks while they were students, and now they are out in the workforce doing some great things. And hopefully this can showcase to you what a future career could look like for you if you come here to Roger Williams. So what I'm going to start with is just ask each of the panelists, and I'll name you each one at a time. Just introduce yourself, what year you graduated from the law school, where you currently work. It would be great. And Zach, why don't we go ahead and start with you?
Sure, yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Zachary Lyons. I graduated from Roger Williams in 2017. And I currently work at Gonzalez Law Offices. It's a very small office of 3 attorneys in East Providence and here in Rhode Island. And I practice immigration law.
Great, thank you. Elise, why don't we go to you next?
Hi everyone, my name is Elise Antone Smythe, and I graduated from Roger Williams in 2018. And I currently work right now at the Office of the Rhode Island Attorney General. So I'm a juvenile prosecutor. I work in the Juvenile and District Unit.
Thank you. Valerie?
I'm Valerie Leo. I graduated from Roger Williams Law in 2014. And right now I work at Rhode Island Legal Services. It's the only nonprofit law firm that's in the state of Rhode Island. And currently I work in the Responsible Parent Project, where I represent folks, indigent defendants who are currently up for contempt for child support. So.
Okay, thank you. Brendan?
Hi everyone, my name is Brendan Sullivan. I graduated in 2016. I am a staff attorney at Textron, which is a big corporation, which is headquartered in Providence. I do global anti-corruption compliance there.
Great, thank you, Brendan. Leticia.
Hi everyone, I'm Leticia Pimentel. I graduated from Roger Williams in 2014. And I am currently an associate at a law firm in Providence called Robinson & Cole, and I'm a member of their energy telecommunications practice group.
Thank you. And Hala. Oh, you're on mute, Hala.
Sorry, I'm talking on my phone as well as my computer, so let me know if there's if you're hearing it double. But I graduated in 2010. I am currently the Director for Cybersecurity and Innovation at the Department of Homeland Security. And I'm also the Principal Director of that same office, the private sector office, in an acting capacity right now.
Great, thank you all. So we'll probably go in the same order with the next round of questions. So I would like each one of you to tell us more about the type of law you practice, because obviously there's so many different things you can do with a law degree. So as you've seen, we have some of our grads who are in law firms, some who are in nonprofits, some who are with corporations and government entities. So for students looking at law schools and considering law as a career, that might seem like a lot of different things. So each one of them I'm going to ask sort of break down, what do you do in terms of your practice area, the type of law? Are you in court all the time? Are you doing more transactional work? And what it's like to work in the environment you work in. We have some large employers, some small employers, and also sort of what got you to where you are today. Some of you might have been in these positions or with these employers since you graduated. Others of you may have done different things between graduation 10 years ago now, Hala, and today. So just if you could just sort of give an overview of that, and Zach, we'll start with you in terms of just what it's like to do the work that you do and what you've done professionally to get to where you are.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I practice immigration law. So what I do is I represent people who are here who are applying for immigration benefits. So It could be spouses of U.S. citizens, children, family members of U.S. citizens. I also spend a lot of time in court, in immigration court. I represent people who are in what's called removal proceedings or deportation proceedings. And so we try to defend them from deportation, to try to find a way for them to be able to stay here. I also represent people who are applying for U.S. citizenship and their applications, and if there's any complications that go along with that application. And then I also represent asylum seekers, so people who I'm sure most of you are familiar with, people who come from another country and are seeking asylum in this country. They're seeking to stay here because they have a fear of returning to their home country. So a good deal of the work that I do is representing them and trying to present the evidence and show why they have a well-founded fear of returning to their country of origin. Like I said earlier, I work at a very small office. It's just me and two other attorneys and a few other two paralegals. And I started with this office, Gonzalez Law Offices, when I was in law school, just doing paralegal type work. And then it just so happened that afterwards they asked me to stay on, and I've been there since I graduated in 2017. So it was a pretty linear trajectory to get to where I am.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Elise, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, so as I stated, I work at the Office of the Attorney General. So I represent the interest of society, of course. Currently, right now, I am in the juvenile and district court unit, primarily in juvenile. So what that means is we prosecute juveniles who commit felonies. They're called delinquencies, and also some misdemeanors. And then within the district court, that's more on the adult side, where the state prosecutes felonies as well, and also handles the prosecution for different counties, different counties and towns within Rhode Island. When I was in law school, I worked at the Providence City Solicitor's Office. So I was able to gain a lot of treadway there and make a lot of connections. And once I was able to pass the bar, and there was an opening, I applied and I was able to get right in. So it's something that I always wanted to do, criminal law. I'm in court all the time, although not so much now, they're shut down. But that's what I wanted to always do, was to litigate. So yeah, we're in court Monday through Friday, usually at the Providence Garrahy complex in Providence. But there's also different counties. You have Kent County, Newport County, and also the courtroom in Wakefield. So there's 4 separate counties that we have to deal with. My office is pretty large. There's a lot of staff. There's a lot of units within the office. My unit in particular, there's about 7 or 8 of us, and I actually practice with about 4 people that I graduated with. So it's amazing that we were able to, we didn't think it was going to end up that way, but it was amazing that we're all working together, and we're all native Rhode Islanders anyway. So we were all going to end up in Rhode Island, but yep. So that's what I do.
Great. Thank you. Valerie.
So echoing what Elise was saying, I also feel like I work with quite a few folks who are not only native to Rhode Island, but also who are Roger Williams grads. And that's always a comfort. I feel like wherever you go, you can kind of find a home with other Roger Williams grads that just kind of take you right in, take you under their wing. And it's the most comforting feeling, honestly. Pretty much wherever I've gone or wherever I've had a job since I've left Roger Williams has been in a place where I've found someone else from the school. So that's been a big help. But right now, like I said before, I work for Rhode Island Legal Services, sometimes abbreviated as RILS, if you hear me say that. But I work with a unit right now where we represent folks. We're court appointed. So like Elise, I'm in court every day, Monday through Friday, if the courts were open. But as you know, with everything going on, they're not. But we're finding ways still to make ourselves useful, even outside of court. Before I was in that particular unit, I was working in housing, which kind of took me in a couple different directions. So most of the folks that we're helping out at Legal Services and Housing, they're in some form of subsidized housing. So if they have a Section 8 voucher, or they live in public housing, or just some sort of situation that's just too bad or too heinous to ignore, you know, so a really crappy landlord, you know, not making repairs, or, you know, letting a property get really bad for someone who's, you know, really deserving of our help. We definitely like to go to bat for folks that are in a situation that they definitely don't deserve to be in. In that, I also had some experience helping folks. There's still, you know, the fallout from the foreclosure crisis. So that kind of took me in some directions with bankruptcy, and then also in the state court level as well. So that kind of pulled me to a bunch of different directions, but it was complementary for the work I was doing prior. Just about maybe a little over a month after studying for the bar, getting through it and everything after graduating, I applied for it was supposed to be a 2-week temporary gig, help us out for a little bit at a title company here in Providence. And they ended up asking me to stay on. And then I worked there for about 3 years until they just purely came under economic hardship and, you know, faced a layoff. But within a month, I was at Legal Services with a bunch of friendly faces. So I've been very happy ever since.
Great. Brendan, before we move on to you, I just want to make sure that I note this. When we had originally planned this panel, it was for one of the admitted students' days in Bristol. So that's why you're hearing from so many Rhode Island-centric alumni, which is also why we added Hala, who's down in DC. Now that we have gone virtual, we will have more alumni from all over the country participating, but we had already invited this great panel. So that's just to give some context why so many of them are in Rhode Island right now. So, so just wanted to make sure I made that note. Brendan, go ahead. Thanks.
All right, sure thing. So I'll start back after law school. I did 2 years of clerkships. I was a law clerk in the Superior Court, which is our trial court level, and then I did a year in the Supreme Court. From there, I went to the AG's office as well. I was a prosecutor there for about 1.5 years. So I think the tail end of my job there was, you know, shortly after Elise had started, and yes, certainly a lot of Roger Williams people in the AG's office. So I was a prosecutor there as well. There was a civil division as well that a lot of alumni work in too. And yeah, so then essentially I recently underwent a pretty drastic career change, and I went into the corporate world. I started to work at Textron earlier this year, and the way that happened was essentially one of my classmates who I was on law review with has been working there since law school. And he let me know about a job opportunity there that I kind of jumped at, and it worked out. So I'm still getting used to the change. Went from being in court every day to being in an office every day, now at home every day. So figuring it all out still, but I am loving the change. Certainly getting some different experience. And really what I do is, like I said, it's global anti-corruption compliance. There's a federal law, the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, that basically prohibits companies from engaging in corruption around the world. But for a company as big as Textron, who has, you know, thousands of business partners around the world, we essentially have to do compliance checks on all of our new partners and ongoing checks. There's, you know, the threat of massive penalties for these bigger companies. So that's something that they invest in. So that's what I'm working on now. And like I said, I work with another Roger Williams alumni there as well.
Thank you. Leticia.
Okay. So again, I'm in a law firm, so I'm in the private sector, and I started this job last February. When I first graduated from Roger Williams in 2014, I went to clerkships, which means you're working with a judge, doing research, writing. Anytime there's, you know, pending litigation before a judge, and sometimes it can be criminal, but most often it's civil. After, you know, listening to both sides, the judges issue a written decision, and that's what they need law clerks for, to help them in the decision-making process, and also in writing, which I did that for 4 years, which is a little bit unique because it's usually like a 1 to 2 year thing, but it just worked out for me. And I'll talk about that later because it ties into a lot of opportunities that, I had because of Roger Williams, and it opened doors, I think, that otherwise wouldn't exist. So I clerked for 4 years in the state court, 3 years and 1 year in federal court. And then after that clerkship, I started the firm where I am now. And I am in the energy, environmental, and telecommunications practice group, but mostly I focus on energy law. And in Rhode Island, so my biggest client is the state's utility for both gas and electric. And there are a lot of, regulatory compliance filings that a utility company has to essentially file a lot of paperwork with the state. It has to ask for permission whenever they're going to increase your rates, and they have to justify why they're increasing the rates. Because unlike, usually commerce, you can't have a monopoly on any type of commerce, but utilities is the exact opposite, because we don't want, 10 different gas pipes companies, with gas pipes underground, or we don't want all like the overhead electrical lines. So because it is essentially a monopoly, it's really highly regulated by the state. So my job is to, get everything approved. There are compliance filings, which are just like routine stuff. And there's also like requests that we have to make to the state. Like, here's this energy efficiency program. We have, millions of dollars we want to spend on, on reducing greenhouse gases in the state of Rhode Island. Can you approve this plan? So that's something that I get to do, and I think it's really interesting and cool. Right now, interestingly, one of my colleagues is on maternity leave. So actually 60% of my work isn't energy anymore. I'm actually working with a cybersecurity partner and working on data breaches, which is very interesting, very different than what I'm used to doing. And it's actually been really, really neat. And I think in a law firm, like, we also have a lot of opportunity to do pro bono work. So I'll just add that I also, being an immigrant myself, I've always been interested in immigration law. And in law school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And the opportunity that I have now sort of happened. But I've always been interested in immigration law. So I'm really happy that I'm working in a place that lets me get involved in immigration cases on a pro bono basis. So right now I work with an organization called KIND, which is Kids in Need of Defense, which are kids that, enter this country without any parents, without a legal guardian, and they are now seeking to stay here. So I have a few clients that I've been working with as well. So it's, if you can tell, it's an array of different things that I have on my plate.
Great, thank you. Okay, Hala.
So I think I'm probably the only person on this panel that does not practice law in the traditional sense. I don't go to court. What I do is I work for the federal government here in DC. I've been with the Department of Homeland Security for the past 10 years since I graduated, in different roles and different capacities. I started as a presidential management fellow, which is a 2-year fellowship program. You go into the federal government, and it is intended to prepare you to enter basically like the managerial level of civil service, the leadership levels of civil service. I think I was the first PMF that Roger Williams had, but I know we've had several since, which is really pretty cool because it's created this community of folks in DC that have come through, and there's like a nice little community. Some people have moved on, some people have stayed. So there really is, to echo my fellow panelists, there really is like a family feeling to the alumni wherever you are from Roger Williams. That sort of, I don't know, spirit lives on. So my work, essentially right now, what I'm doing, I'm the Director of Cybersecurity and Innovation for the Department of Homeland Security and our private sector office, which is a very long title, which essentially just means that I build relationships with technology companies or innovative technologists on a variety of issues on behalf of our senior leadership. So that's the secretary or the acting secretary right now, and other senior leaders across a 22 component, third largest cabinet agency in the United States. I created the role, so, which is a sort of double-edged sword because it means that you get to do all the things that you want to do, but you also are responsible for things you maybe didn't anticipate when you created the role. But I've been with the department, like I said, for 10 years. I worked on the Hill while I was at the department. I was a detailee to the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee. Before that, I worked in the Office of Strategy and Policy, building strategic plans for the department, which is kind of an interesting exercise for a lawyer who's used to looking at things analytically versus sort of pie in the sky, but was a good experience because it helped me think about things holistically. The way I like to talk about my law school experience leading into my career experience is that I knew going into law school that I didn't want to be a real lawyer. My mother is a federal prosecutor. She was a DA, a district attorney before that. So I knew what that looked like, and I knew that wasn't right for me. But I also knew that I loved all of the things that law school could teach me. And I had an amazing experience over the 3 years of Roger Williams. And it set me up perfectly for going into the work that I'm doing now. Just like it set up my co-panelists for being litigators and for being in corporations and doing all of that. Because of the choices I made during school and the support I got from the faculty, I was really well positioned to go to DC and create this career that's sort of a non-traditional legal career. And I like to think of all of the skills that I learned in law school as the sort of soft skills of lawyering, right? So you've got advocacy and negotiation and working, bringing disparate entities together to come to a conclusion, mediation, all of that I deal with every single day because I'm constantly translating and talking between groups of folks that do not speak the same language and do not have the same priorities. So that is the work that I do. I'm just being told my battery is running low, so I might go dark for a minute to plug in my computer because I've been working all day. But that's the work that I do, and it's been a wild 10 years to be in DC, but I feel like the education that I got at Roger Williams really set me up for success because I know that no matter what problem comes across my desk, there's somebody I know that could help me or point me in the right direction. And that's really incredible.
Thank you, Hala. Okay, Zach, we'll start back up again with you. And you mentioned a little bit about what you did while you were in law school that prepared you for the career you have. But I'm just wondering, were there any other activities, programs, classes, or extracurriculars that you participated in that you feel like had a really positive impact on your career? And then we'll go on down the line and ask all the panelists the same question.
Yeah. So I went to law school knowing that I was at least interested in practicing immigration law. And so I knew that going into it, so I was able to plan my 3 years of law school accordingly. So in law school, the first immigration experience I had was I did alternative spring break. So alternative spring break is during your spring break, you can go and participate in a number of different pro bono legal services programs that you can go. They have all over the place. Where they have Brooklyn Defenders, Bronx. Like you can go work in a public defender's office. You could go work in. They have a Women in Prison project. They have what else? A number of other programs. But so the one I did was I worked for Catholic Social Services, which is it's through Catholic Charities and it does immigration work. And I was working on immigration cases for that week. And so that was the first exposure to immigration law that I got. Then I took immigration law, the class, and just to get the legal background. And then probably the most important experience that I had to set me up for my career was to do the immigration clinic. So Roger Williams Law School has an immigration clinic where you work on real live immigration cases under the supervision of the clinic director. And you go to court, you handle the cases as if they were your own. And I did that for my whole 3L year. I had, 3 or 4 cases that I worked on. And that really, after doing that, I was ready to practice immigration law. I may not have known every single type of case that there is, but I at least had a very, very solid foundation to be able to pick up as soon as I started working after law school.
Great. Thank you. Elise.
Okay, so I was involved in quite a few things. I'll piggyback off of what Zach was stating. I actually did alternative spring break as well, and my one all year. I I went to Committee for Public Counsel Services, CPCS, in New Bedford, and that's actually, it's criminal law. It was what I wanted to do, but it was they represent indigent clients, so I got to see how the courts worked in Massachusetts, and you know, as a 1L, we didn't get a chance to really do much then, but we got to observe a lot, and that was a phenomenal experience. And I also went on to become one of the co-coordinators of alternative spring break. So myself and somebody else were able to facilitate everybody being placed in their programs. And we actually were able to do, I think for the first time, I don't know if they're still doing it, but we were actually able to send some students to Haiti. And that was an amazing experience for them. I also too did one of the clinics. I did the criminal defense clinic. And that was an amazing experience with Professor Horwitz, where you actually do take on your own clients. You're in the courtroom all the time. And you learn the hands-on experience that you don't learn while you're in law school, which is, you know, how to even represent, you know, speak to the court, represent yourself in a courtroom, you know, interact with clients, interview them, etc. All those things that you don't learn sitting behind a desk listening to lectures or briefing cases. I also was part of the trial team and moot court, and I also was on the moot court executive board. So I kind of stretched myself a little thin, but it was an amazing experience, and all things that helped me to become a phenomenal litigator. Not saying that I'm the greatest, I'm just saying like it really helped me out to be able to go out into the world and do what I wanted to do. So I would most definitely suggest participating in a clinic, an externship. I also did the prosecution externship as well. So I wanted to learn both sides of criminal law, criminal defense and prosecution. And I was happy with prosecution, so that's where I'm at right now.
Great, thank you. Valerie.
Okay, so I absolutely loved an experience that I had through the corporate externship program that I had with the beloved Professor Banks, who moved on unfortunately to a school up in Boston, but she was a great professor, and I'm sure who's taken over for her is running the program wonderfully. But that got me an opportunity to work up at the CVS headquarters, you know, where I was working alongside attorneys who were also alums of Roger Williams, you know, alongside them, negotiating with them, helping them to renew contracts, had my own little bank of contracts that I was responsible for getting renewals and that kind of thing. Because I went through school believing that I would end up very transactional, which is what I sort of ended up doing when I first got out. But that, you know, your course sort of changes sometimes and you sort of roll with it and you adapt with it. But I mean, besides the academic parts of it, I mean, I also enjoyed a lot of my time I spent in certain societies that I either was member to. There's a ton of different societies and clubs that the school has. I had a particular interest in the International Law Society, so there's opportunity first year where you can be like a first year representative, where you're with the executive board of the particular society that you're interested in. And you just kind of help them to promote events. You get to do free lunch is a very popular ticket if you're hosting any events, a word to the wise. But I also enjoyed participating in, it's a good springboard if you're a member of the society at the executive level, to participate in the Student Bar Association, which in that you can almost kind of think of it like a student council in a way, but you really get to sort of engage with your fellow students and you know, affect change, you know, if you see things going on at school. And let me think what else. Yeah, I mean, that internship and kind of having opportunities to kind of engage with other people with common interests was a thing that I think was really prevalent at Roger Williams for sure.
Great, thank you. Brendan?
Yeah, sure. So I didn't know what I wanted to do after law school, so I kind of just tried to do all sorts of different stuff. And I would say I really focused on 2 different tracks. I did like a reading and writing sort of track, and then a litigation sort of track. Tried to get different experiences at those. I would have said my strength at that point was more of the reading and writing. So I made an effort to try to get better on the litigation front and get experience with that sort of work, even if it was uncomfortable. So I did some trial ad classes. I had a trial ad taught by a superior court judge, so that was invaluable. Did, hands-on, some sort of practical criminal law classes that were taught by attorneys. There was a summer stipend at one point for doing pro bono work, so I just went over to the PD's office for a summer and was in court for a summer, and just really jumped right in. And then in terms of how I ended up clerking and whatnot, I did law review, so that was a fun organization and a good experience. That's like a lot of reading, writing, research, and really you get so much better at that. And you work with a lot of good people, basically writing articles and editing articles that get published. And then I did, the most practical thing I did was called the Judicial Externship. Different people get different assignments with different judges, and you work there for a semester. You get credits for it. You get to just work in chambers, so you see everything that happens in court. You see everything that happens behind the scenes. You get to do some writing for the judge. You get to work with the law clerks and whatnot. Letitia, I'm pretty sure, was a clerk up in the Supreme Court for Chief Justice Sattel, right, when I was extern. So I was an extern for Justice Flaherty at the Supreme Court. And, that really ended up just completely changing my life. I didn't know anything about him, really. I just got placed with him and we hit it off, and he likes the work I did. And really made my career. And that's my biggest takeaway from Roger Williams. And just the thing I found most valuable is it's really astonishing the connection that they have to the judiciary, being the only law school in Rhode Island. So you make connections that I don't think would be possible at any other school in any other state. And like I said, it just changed my life entirely. And, I couldn't be more grateful for that. So, that's where I am.
Great. Thank you. And there were some abbreviations used there. Trial ad is trial advocacy.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Which is a skills-based class about standing up in the courtroom. And the PD's office is a public defender's office. So, just some explanation in case the audience is unfamiliar with those acronyms. So, Leticia, I'll move on to you.
Okay. So for me, I worked full-time during undergrad. So when I started law school, I knew that I wanted to get involved with anything and everything I could. I decided it wasn't going to work. I worked once a week, and even that, it didn't last long. I just wanted to get involved in every organization and take advantage of every opportunity, because I knew this was going to be my career. And I knew that the time that I was investing into like she said, spreading yourself thin in some ways, but it was sort of the time to do it, because you just want to soak in as much as you could. So my first summer, I interned with the law firm that I am with now. And I feel like every single experience that I had led to something even greater in the future, and it wasn't purposeful. It just happened. Everybody says oh, Rhode Island's a small state, so but it can really work in your advantage if you do a good job and impress people, because people really are willing to go out to bat for you. And this is probably a little side from answering the question, but when I first decided that I wanted to go to law school, I didn't have any lawyers in my family. I didn't know any lawyers, so I was a little bit intimidated of entering a profession that I didn't have connections in, especially when you start school and so-and-so's dad is a lawyer and so-and-so's uncle is a judge, and you're oh, what am I getting myself into? And I'm so happy that I went to Roger Williams, because the connections I made because of the school made up for that 100%. And of course I had to put in the work as well, but it's the school sort of gave me the opportunity to show that I could also do the work, even though I wasn't coming in with a connection for an interview or things like that. So my first summer, I got what I thought was the best internship ever. It's my job now. I absolutely love it. It is working at this law firm, Robinson & Cole. So that was like a unique opportunity that's only available to Roger Williams students. It is actually National Grid, which is the state's utility company, with the law firm. They like co-sponsor this fellowship. And it's, so that was just opened so many doors. And then my second year, I did also an externship with Judge Thompson in the First Circuit Court of Appeals. And I think like Brendan just said, like that changed like my life absolutely, because it was a judge I worked for. I ended up working with her for the full year. And again, it wasn't someone I chose, like the school matches you up with a judge. So I got matched up with her, and like I was getting credit, excuse me, during the semester, but I also stayed over for the summer as well, for no credits over the summer. But I was there from January to December, which is like a unique, because usually it's one semester, but Judge Thompson always wants one Roger Williams full year extern in her chambers. And I like loved that job. I loved working with her. She was amazing. She was so impressive. And I went to clerk for her after I clerked for the state. So it's sort of like one thing led to the other. So the school matched me up with her, and then I interned there, and then I clerked there after 3 years of clerking in the state. So I also, during my 2L, 3L, I got involved in everything I could. I was part of like the Multicultural Law Student Association. I was on the board. I also got involved with moot court law review. So it's like the school's journal. I knew I wanted to be in the courtroom. I thought I went into law school, like, unlike I think most people that have spoken, like I had no idea like what I wanted to do. I just knew that I like to research, write, like this analytical side, and I wanted to like give it a try. And so I really did like very different things. Like I did the criminal defense clinic because like when I didn't think I wanted to be a criminal lawyer, but when my first year, that was like my favorite class. I just like loved everything about it. I was like, well, I want to try this out. And even though right now I'm not a criminal, defense attorney, like I could totally see that happening in the future because I loved it so much. It's something I'm passionate about. So I think it's like, yeah, I just had so many different opportunities. I'm trying to think, I might have written something down. I also did, I think that's everything. Yeah, I think that's everything. But yeah, the criminal defense clinic was awesome. You're like in court, you have real clients. You get opportunity to like learn everything from like intake, meeting them with them for the first time. And those are skills that like are transferable regardless of what area of the law. So right now I'm doing civil, but it's still like, I'm still meeting with the client. I'm still well, not in court. I'm in like a regulatory body, but it's still a quasi court proceeding. So it's just skills that are transferable. And the school has so many clinics, so many externships, and you just have to take advantage of it. Absolutely.
Well, I'm not sure where Veronica went to, but Hala, we're gonna go to you next.
Sure. So I echo everyone else by saying that there are so many opportunities. And, I grew up in Kansas and I went to college in Minnesota. So coming to Rhode Island was sort of like, everyone was like, why are you going to Rhode Island? And it was the school, I just had everything about it just seemed to fit. And one of the things that really was amazing for me when I talked to people who went to different law schools was the access and the availability of all of our faculty and staff. That's really unprecedented in other schools. It is the amount of access that you have to your faculty, and faculty bringing you into activities and like really encouraging you and helping you, get that summer job or get, placement. It's really unparalleled. So that's overall, I'd say one of the things that that I felt was most helpful to my career. I did a lot of the same things that these other folks have mentioned. I also was a judicial extern for Justice Flaherty on the Rhode Island Supreme Court. It's really rare as a student to be able to essentially clerk for a state Supreme Court justice. Like, that's really rare. So that's a unique opportunity that you get in a small state like Rhode Island, where we are the only law school. And that also, his support, I actually was going to be a clerk for the state court after law school. And I had accepted, that's what I was going to do. And then I got this letter in the mail saying, no, you've been chosen to be a presidential management fellow. And Justice Flaherty had advocated for me being a clerk. And I had to write him a letter basically saying, you know, this is what I'm going to do. And he could not have been more gracious. And of course you should go to DC. Of course you should do this work. Like, that kind of support, I think, is only born out of them having a history of really great students coming to them from Roger Williams. They know that they can trust you. They know that you're going to make the right decisions and that you're going to work hard for them. So that was a great experience. I did a summer at the Rhode Island Federal Prosecutor's Office. That was great. It really, you know, both of those experiences really confirmed my desire to be a civil servant, which is what I'm doing now. I did one of the pro bono trips to Mississippi. This was right after Katrina, so it was about getting people into housing and things like that, and that was really eye-opening over spring break, and that was incredible. I also did the Liberian Truth and Reconciliation Commission. This is 10 years ago, so these are like far back, but there was a ton of Liberian immigrants in Rhode Island, and so this was interviewing people that had been part of the war to work on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So it was taking people's statements about what they had encountered, and that was really incredible. My family on my mother's side are refugees and immigrants, and so it felt really good to be able to give back to another immigrant and refugee community. I'm missing something. I'm missing one thing, and I can't remember what it is. I will say this too, and just because I'm wrapping up this section, is that our career services has been amazing. The hands-on care that they give to the student body has been incredible. And Veronica Aparicio is responsible for basically my entire career trajectory, because she's the one who told me about the Presidential Management Fellowship and was like, here, it's in DC, you should apply, because she knew I wanted to go to DC. I had no idea what it was. I didn't know what it was. She told me to fill it out. I filled it out. I took the test. I got in. So I just have to say that, because I think having career services folks who are so intent on your success, and not just in a, you know, we're going to push you all in the big firm direction because that's what some law schools do, or we're going to push you all in the, you know, state court direction because that's what some law schools do, but somebody who listens to what you want, even if they know it's going to take you out of the local base. And that's why I am often on panels and other things, because I feel like I need to, you know, pay it forward. So I can't say enough good things about Roger Williams. Even just the everyday experience. I was also on moot court, which is how I got to extern for Justice Flaherty, because he saw me in at the moot court finals for getting onto moot court. The Supreme Court, I don't know if they still do it anymore, but the Supreme Court used to judge the moot court finals for 1L. And so everything is sort of like led all together. And if nothing else, I've met some of the most amazing friends of my life at Roger Williams, which has been through these last 10 years, which there's been a lot of changes and upheavals in my life, have carried me through. So that's not a law school experience you're going to read about in a brochure, but it's definitely part of the equation.
Great. Thank you. And thank you for the shout out, Hannah. This is why I've been at the school for so long, because I love what I do. And then I get to see what all my former students now get to do every day. And they're doing some really great things. So I wanted to throw it out to the panel. Did any of you not visit Bristol or the campus, obviously, before you decided to come? So Valerie, you didn't have a chance to visit.
No. So I know that I've been repping Rhode Island this whole time, and it's because I've basically made a place for myself here, you know, and put down roots after school. But I'm, you know, originally from Connecticut. I hightailed it down to North Carolina for undergrad, and it was from there that I applied to go to Roger Williams. And how that ended up, strangely enough, was just through, I think it's through just the National Clearinghouse. When you do the application itself, there's some sort of search tool where you kind of put in some parameters of what you're looking for, and out popped Roger Williams. And at the time, my best friend from childhood from Connecticut was going to University of Rhode Island. So I said, you know, hey, you know anything about this Roger Williams University? And it turned out that she was going there for graduate school as well. So maybe subconsciously I put more effort into the application. I'm not sure, but I applied, was accepted, and, you know, everything while I was in North Carolina. So, you know, from North Carolina, I was like, well, I really hope this is a beautiful place to go, because it's where I'm headed. So, but I was wonderfully and not even just pleasantly, but just blown away with how upkept the campus is. I mean, the picture that's behind Kate, you know, that's like what you can go and look at, you know, if you go on to the edge of campus there. I mein, everything's immaculate. There's plenty of things to do there. I always enjoyed my time down in Bristol, and I lived in a town nearby called Warren. But just, you know, the building itself, everyone just with how friendly they were. I remember at the time meeting Dean Logan, who is an incredibly tall gentleman, and just how welcoming everybody was. So it's definitely a place for you folks out there in the audience that if you don't get to see it now, when you do get to see it, fear not, it'll be just as beautiful in the pictures as it is in person. So, you know, there are folks that even not in what's going on in the world right now did what you're going to end up doing foreseeably, but yeah.
Right.
And I did visit the campus, of course, because I like live like 20 minutes away. But I will just add that like Bristol is beautiful. I mean, it really is like very, very scenic. It's so like it's everybody that I've heard, because like in my internships, I had a lot of people like living in cities. And so when they were like traveling to Providence for, you know, which is a much smaller city, for an internship, they were like, oh my God, I'm so jealous of your campus, because like when you're in law school in the city, you just have like so much going on, so much noise, so much traffic, so much. And like Roger Williams campus is just like picturesque. It's quiet. It's beautiful. Like I studied for the bar exam, which is like the most like probably painful experience of your life. Like in one of the buildings that is like in front of, for that view right there, like every single day for like a month, I drove to school early in the morning, stayed there, and like just to have that view, because it's so beautiful. So like, it's not just like the picture thing, like the school is immaculate. It's really beautiful.
I studied for this bar at the beach, because you can drive like 15
even
minutes
better.
away and see a beach. And it was, I mean, it really, I'll just second, I mean, I saw the school before I went, but like, coming from Kansas, coming from Minnesota, I was like, this isn't real. And my friends and I will joke that the town of Bristol is kind of like Stars. If anyone watches Gilmore Girls, like it's kind of like Stars Hollow. Like that's the vibe. It's like a very small town, New England, and then there's just ocean everywhere. It's gorgeous. And if you do come here, you should go to the Casual Inn, because they have delicious food, and that's where I waited tables and tended bar for the 3 years of law school.
Go. And Warren, which is like the town nearby, has an amazing, I lived there for a year, has like awesome restaurant scene, like really, really good food. And so it's a good area all around.
I would like to talk a little bit about Newport. That's where I'm born and raised and from. I lived there during law school, and that's where I live now. It's about 20 minutes away from the campus. I actually went to Roger Williams undergrad. So I never actually went into the law school building, but I always looked across and said, I'm going to get there one day. I'm going to come see you. But yeah, it's beautiful. Newport's, I would echo the same thing with Newport, very scenic, beaches and, you know, all of that good stuff. So you guys will be amazed when you do come to the campus.
Great. Is there anything else that anybody wants to add regarding their experience at Roger Williams, or what their biggest surprise was, or any other pieces of advice if you were in the shoes of our participants here who are considering law school? Anything else you'd like to add that you haven't already mentioned? Hala?
So one thing I will say is that coming to DC, everyone's a lawyer. Like there's lawyers everywhere. And I know that, you know, there's always thoughts about the size of your school or the rankings of your school or any of those things. And I literally have no idea where size-wise or ranking-wise Roger Williams is right now. But I do know that I will put my legal education up against anybody, any other lawyer I've ever met in DC. And I think I'd probably win because it's just the combination of the faculty, the rigor of the study, the community, the other students. I feel really, really blessed to have gone to Roger Williams and lucky. And especially when I'm talking to folks who I just know did not have that same experience. You know, when I talk about law school, I get like excited and misty-eyed, and other people talk about law school and it's like they were in, you know, like indentured servitude. So I just think, I just want to share that because I know that it's always a thing in the minds of people that are applying for law school. And I think Roger Williams, I'm not going to say it was the best 3 years of my life because I always hope that that's ahead of me, but it certainly was way up there.
Yeah, I would have to agree with Hala. Believe it or not, some of the professors that we have, pretty much all of the professors that we have are some of the top legal minds in this country. And so you can't get caught up on the rankings of the school or the fact that you don't go to an Ivy League school or, you know, something like that. You will have, you know, some of the best experiences there. You will be taught by some of the greatest people, even our admissions crew. I mean, it's invaluable what you'll leave with from Roger Williams. And I feel exactly the same way as her. I think I would put my legal education up against anybody. They provide you with everything that I believe any law school could provide you with. And so just take advantage of that and just be proud of the school because it's wonderful. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything that's been said. And I'll just add that it's like, obviously, you know, to choose this panel, they were trying to pick, you know, different career paths, different graduating years, but I can speak for all of my friends that graduated with me and they feel the same way about the school and they would honestly be here. And they're also doing amazing work. We're all in different places and doing different things, but all very like rewarding. I think they all, like myself, and so thankful to the school for, you know, where I am in my career. So you know, even though it's us speaking here, I think probably everybody here agrees with me that their friends feel the same way about the school and just how helpful and how many resources the law school has. Again, when I was interning with kids from other law schools and I would, you know, just mention a resource, they'd be like, wait, what? Especially when I was applying for clerkships, which they are very competitive. There are only so many clerkships out there. So we're all sort of as interns 2L during your 2L summers, when you start thinking about that, we were all applying for clerkships. And I just mentioned that, oh yeah, well, you know, I had like a professor is helping me with, you know, my package. And they're like, wait, what? Because we have a professor in law school that actually is dedicated to, you know, assisting with clerkship specifically. And no other like student in the room had anything close to that. And there were like 6 other law schools, you know, different law schools. So it's just like there are a lot of resources, and so, but they're only going to benefit you if you take advantage of them. And so like for me, I'm like, if the school has all these things, like if I don't take advantage of it, that's my loss. So I'm going to give 100% to like my, you know, my classwork, reading, writing, preparing for exams. And I'm also going to use every single resource to help me in my profession. So it's like one of those things. And I just wanted to mention that there were questions here that have since disappeared.
Yeah, so I can help with some of those questions. We have a pretty general question that I think a lot of you would be able to speak to. How easy is it to fit pro bono into your schedule? There's a little more specific one for Zach that follows that up. He's interested in immigration law, and he's wondering how many firms do the same kind of work that you do. He's very interested, but he has been cautioned that it might not be, you know, one of the best fields to narrow himself into.
So you want me to take that one?
Sure.
Okay. So the pro bono question, I do very little pro bono work. I do some pro bono work. I do guardian ad litem for the city of Providence. So they call me like a couple times a year to do a guardian ad litem case for them pro bono, where I represent someone who's incapacitated, or usually it's somebody who has a medical disability, and just to represent them in a guardianship proceeding. A family member usually is trying to seek guardianship over them. It's not very intensive and it's pretty easy to fit in my schedule. As for immigration, I mean, I think there's a lot of people doing immigration right now. I think that it's grown in interest in the past few years. But that doesn't mean it's like, I think that it's a great field to get into. And I tell anyone that is even remotely interested in it to do it, because we need good people doing it, people who care about the issues doing that type of work. I'm not really sure I can answer the question about getting into the field. I mean, I think it's been a great field for me to be in. I've thoroughly enjoyed practicing immigration law. I think a lot of people who I'm surrounded with who practice immigration law enjoy it, even though it's challenging and it's a very challenging time to be doing it. I would say that if you care about the issue, if you are looking for an area of law that's rewarding, for me, there's no better feeling that I can think of than when I have a trial in immigration court and the judge says, your application has been granted, and you can turn to your client and say, welcome to the United States of America, and their face lights up or they cry. And it's like, I can't think of a better feeling than that. And that's what keeps me doing it, even on the challenging days, which are pretty frequent at this point. But anyway, it's a great area of law, and I really enjoy it. And I'd say, forget what anybody else is telling you, and if you're interested in it, then do it. But I mean, I think that from what we've all said in this panel, there's so many experiences that you can have in law school. I mean, literally, you can try so many different experiences and try things. And I think that's one of the things that should be definitely taken from this panel, is that one of the lessons of law school is just try things, do different things, do criminal defense, try corporate counsel externship, work for a judge, whatever it is, just to try things out. Because I do know that a lot of people that I went to law school with maybe came to law school with an idea of what they wanted to do, and then they ended up practicing after they graduated something completely different. So I think that in some ways is more the norm than my situation, where I came to law school knowing I wanted to do immigration law, or like Elise's situation where she knew she wanted to work in criminal law and then stuck with it. I think most people come in and try something out and they like it, and that's what they end up doing.
And just to address it as well, and I work with students all the time who are interested in immigration, and those who are truly interested that sort of follow the path that Zach did, which is volunteer early, take the relevant classes. Zach, I know you had language skills before you even came into law school. If you speak another language, there's always room for more attorneys to represent individuals who are seeking immigration status. Keep in mind, there are two types of immigration. We've got what Zach is mostly focusing on, which is family-based or asylum refugee immigration. And there's also business immigration, right, which is when it's corporations that are looking to bring in individuals from overseas to get visas and to work in the States. So there always going to be, at least for that area, there's a lot that can be available. So if it's something you're genuinely interested in, you just have to be strategic and take advantage of whatever opportunities you can, and then we market you that way.
Could anyone speak to the opportunities to do pro bono? Maybe some of you guys in civil litigation, private practice.
Yeah, so I think I talked a little bit about this, but I am involved now in working on immigration pro bono cases. And I know my law firm, and I think most law firms now, really value pro bono work. They realize it's essential to our profession and to serve in our communities and those who can't afford legal representation. So we have like a billable requirements at the end of the year, which means like every attorney has to bill so many hours to the client. And my firm, and most firms hopefully, also account pro bono towards meeting that requirement. So I can spend time on pro bono cases and still have that count, which is, I think, is awesome. And I know that like my firm, again, I can speak about my experience, but I think that's true of most of the people that I know in private practice. Like, they want you to do pro bono work. They want you to get involved with different organizations. So it's up to you sort of to take initiative and say, okay, which one do I want to work with? Like, my firm has like a pro bono department with, you know, there's a whole process, and there's a bunch of nonprofits that we work with and partner with, but you also can sort of go outside of that and find something that you're passionate about and present it to the pro bono committee and have, you know, sort of create that relationship between the firm and the pro bono organization. So it's definitely, there are definitely opportunities out there. Hopefully you find a firm that, you know, values that as much as you do. And those firms exist. So.
Yeah, and you guys will notice too when at Roger Williams, there's a requirement to do a certain amount of pro bono hours. So it actually starts you off, you know, learning on what you want to do for pro bono. You can choose a bunch of different facets of or avenues that you want, and, you know, do some pro bono work while you're in law school. And then when you get out, most states, like their bar associations, provide pro bono programs that you can sign up to and help out that way. I actually got a chance to do that for a couple months before I started working at the AG's office, and it was very rewarding, and it just makes you feel good that you're doing this. You know, you're not doing it for any money or anything, but you're really, really helping people out that really need your help. I got to work on a few domestic cases, divorce cases, and restraining orders, things like that. And these are people that are really in need. But I'm sure wherever you end up, there'll be some type of way for you to get involved in pro bono work. It's not really that hard to do it, unless your job doesn't allow it. I can't do it anymore working at the Attorney General's office, but I'm sure it'll be easy for you to find a way to do it.
And of course, working for a nonprofit that provides pro bono work would be like, you know, the most direct way, but there are indirect ways to do it as well.
Right.
So we had a question. I know a few of you talked about the judicial externships, and we have a question about, do you recall if that was a large program while you were a student, or if that was a smaller program where it was very selective? If you can speak to that. If you can't speak to that, just so everyone knows, we do have a clinical guarantee panel tomorrow night at 7 p.m. So if you're watching this live, you can register for that and just tune in again tomorrow night. And we will have faculty members and staff members there to talk to you about the clinical opportunities we have at Roger Williams.
All my friends did it. I mean, I think it's probably, there's some level, I mean, I don't know if everybody who wants to do it can do it that specific time, right? So it's like, there's every semester, you can do it over the summer. I think the school has plenty of opportunities to anybody who wants to do it. But let's say you want to intern for a judge that, you know, in a completely different state that maybe nobody from Roger Williams has like interned with them before. The school will still help you in that process and will help you apply and facilitate that, you know, to the extent possible. So I know friends that wanted something very, very specific, and they went after and they got those internships. So yes, the school has plenty, but also like, don't let that limit you. If you want to, you know, have an internship in a different, you know, if you have family living in a different state, or you want to go for the summer, live in a different state and do something different, like there are plenty of opportunities out there.
I second that. A lot of my, can you guys hear me? A lot of my friends also did a judicial externship, but you don't have to do them all. It's not like you have to do them one particular semester. I don't know how the program's run anymore, but for us, it was, you sort of could do it like 2L or 3L years. So you had 4 semesters to choose from, and it sounds like now it's the summer too. So, you know, I did mine. I happened to do it at a time when I was taking 17 credits, which was probably not the right idea, but it still worked out great. I still had a great time. I just didn't sleep a whole lot. But a lot of people chose to do it in their 3rd year because they wanted to like have that energy going into bar and working, right? And some people, so it just depends. I remember that there are lots of opportunities because there's all different levels of course you can extern with. So I think there's plenty of opportunities. I'm sure the staff on the call can speak to it, the specifics of the program now, but that was my recollection. Lots of people did it. I think there were some criteria about, probably some like grade criteria and things like that, but that's pretty typical of any program, because first things first, you want to have your grades in good order. But I don't remember the cutoff being like crazy stringent. It was just like, you know, if you're doing okay in class, and you know, so.
Anyone else?
I was just gonna say, it reminded me that I think there might have been like 12 people in it the semester I did it, and yeah, you can really do it 2L, 3L a year, whatever semester you want to do it for credits, and you can do it, I think, anywhere from 2, 3, 4 days, depending how many credits you want to get for it. But I really just remembered that there is a class once a week that's taught by Judge Smith, who's a federal court judge, and Justice Flaherty, state Supreme Court. And I remembered that actually there was at least 2, maybe 3 people who did them in New Jersey for the semester. I think like the program will really set you up somewhere if you want to go start working where you want to work after law school. And then they just video into the class. It's 1 night a week. So they do work with you to make it beneficial.
Well, thank you all for your answers there. I actually think that we're a little bit past the hour that we had scheduled for this, and Veronica has disappeared again. So she must be having some technical difficulties. But I really want to thank you all for joining us. Anyone whose question we did not get to, we will follow up via email. And if it's specific to one of our panelists, we will try to get you in touch with them if the panelists are open to that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm happy, and I think probably everybody else will feel the same way, to share my contact information if anybody has follow-up questions that were specific to me or just about law school in general.
Well, thank you. We really do appreciate that. And we will be happy to do that for you, so that way everyone's not running for pens and paper to write it down now. But thank you all for joining us. We really do appreciate it. And like I said, for those of you prospective students and admitted students who are watching, please join us again tomorrow night, because especially the end of this conversation about that judicial externship, it will get picked up right again tomorrow as we continue with that panel. So thank you all for joining us, and you all have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Good luck,
Bye.
everybody.
Yes, good luck.